Welcome back to the All Bike Update. I'm your host, Mitch Hackelman, and today we're going to be checking out the Hammer from Ecotric. So some of you are just here for an overview of the bike. Let's talk about some of those big specs. We've got a 1000 watt rear hub motor, 48 volt, 13 amp hour lockable removable battery, throttle and pedal assist. Top speed of 28 miles per hour, hydraulic disc brakes, a price tag of $1,500, and a cool retro vibe. So right off the bat, it looks like something that's very comfortable, something you could cruise around on the boardwalks, maybe on some tightly packed sand. It's also marketed as a snow bike, and that's probably something it could handle. However, it just denotes a beach sort of vibe to me. So I bet you it would handle itself pretty well in the snow. However, to me, this is really just kind of a beach cruiser. And popping back to the aesthetics, they have two versions of this bike, one that is the orange version and one that is the blue version. Now, it looks like the only thing that's really different is the color of the rims, so you can see the bright orange rims on this one. So we do have some very bold choices for colors here, a couple of different styles in my opinion, that if you were to look at separately, you might not think those would go together, but in the end, it all comes back together to give us this very vintage, retro-styled beach cruiser bike. Next, let's take a look at this motor. The rear hub motor we have here is advertised at 1000 watts. Now, we don't have any way to test for sure if that is the nominal watts on this particular bike. However, it does feel like there was a little bit extra juice in there, especially when compared to some of the recent 750s that we've got our hands on. But if this is a true 1000 watt motor at this price point, which is $1,500 at the time of recording, that is a pretty sweet deal for this much power. I'm not sure what the brand of the motor is. It is an Ecotric branded motor. However, to me, it looks sort of like a rehoused Bafang, a little bit different than some of the AKMs that we've seen on some of these other bikes. So I'm not 100% sure what the parts are underneath this cover. Again, I'm not a motor expert, but this thing held up really well during the ride test and really reminded me a lot of those Bafangs that we've tested in the past. Next, let's talk about the battery. So the battery we have here is a lockable, removable, 48 volts, 13 amp hour battery. So that's going to give us about 624 watt hours. And even though there's no advertised minimum or maximum distance on the Ecotric website, I would estimate you could get anywhere between 25 to 40 miles on this, given the terrain, the conditions, and your utilization of pedal assist versus throttle. The battery itself weighs in at 9.14 pounds, which puts it pretty much on the heavier side of a lot of these batteries we've tested. We don't get any bells and whistles with this battery. There's no USB port or anything like that. We do have a quick notification right here on the top. We can press this red button and that will let us know how much charge we have in the battery. So that's always nice to give it a quick check before you turn the bike on and head out for your ride. With the keys situation here, we do have to leave the keys in there when we're operating the bike, which to me, and it's a personal preference thing, I would rather have removable keys. So with this battery, we don't have the option to remove those keys when we want to operate the bike. However, we can lock the battery and remove the keys and keep those keys with us if we were going into a store or walking away from the bike for some time. I do like the fact that it is removable, gives us options for charging. We can either charge it in the garage or wherever we're storing our bike, but we can also take that off and charge it inside at a more convenient location for us. We do have the addition of this carrying handle on the top here, which makes removing the battery somewhat easier. Now, a caveat to that is we have to move the seat to get the battery out. This may not be the case depending on where you have your seat. So if you're on the taller side, you may not have to worry about this, but for me, and I'm about 5'10", I have to move the seat up a little bit before I can remove the battery. So it's not a huge deal, just something to keep in mind. This is something you'll have to be moving quite a bit if you are on the shorter end and need this saddle down all the way. Next, let's talk about the brakes. The disc brakes we have here are unbranded, however they felt really good in the hands over here on the handlebars, and we didn't have any issues right out of the box. These things functioned well, and the system as a whole has a couple of unique things I'd like to touch on. First and foremost, these hydraulic brakes have motor inhibitors, which means that as soon as we go to apply pressure to these levers, it is going to cut off our power to the motor. Now, this is a big safety thing on some of these bikes. Let's say if you were going and you wanted to stop, but for some reason you were still going with the motor or what have you, you'd be fighting against those things. Now, with this motor inhibitor, as soon as you pull on these levers, it will cut power to the motor, which is a big safety plus. Another plus to this system is we have 180mm discs both on the front and in the rear. And that's going to give us a leg up on the 160mm discs that we see used quite commonly. So all in all, the brakes functioned well, no problems here, and right out of the box, at least with our unit, we were able to just take it out and we didn't have to do any adjustments or suffer through any of that brake grinding noise. Next, let's talk about the gears. So up here in the cockpit, we have this Shimano SIS Index shifter. Now, I am a big fan of this shifter. It's very simple, very easy to use. So no complaints for the shifter as a whole. However, from a design perspective, I would like to point out that here on the right side, we have this half grip, our half grip twist throttle, and then our shifter way up here. Now, what that causes me to do is if I want to shift a gear, I have to pretty much completely remove my right hand from that right handlebar, moving it all the way up to the top if I wanted to change gears. So although that's not a huge deal, I would like to see maybe some thought put into how we can bring this closer to the grip here. One idea that I had would be to replace this twist throttle with a thumb throttle. I feel like if we were to do that, it would take less movement to get up there to do some shifting, and also solves the twofold problem of having this half twist throttle on this bike. The way that the handlebars come around, it's kind of a strange angle to be also twisting my wrist. I found I was getting a little bit of tension there with using this twist throttle. Again, not the end of the world, and if you don't plan on using the throttle, it doesn't really matter. However, I feel like there could be more ergonomic ways to have a throttle attached to this bike. And that is attached back here to this Shimano Altus. Wait. Oh no, that's a tourney. Oh, okay. Look at me fact checking myself. So that's connected to this Shimano tourney derailleur back here, and one of the things that I noted with at least the unit that we got, it probably could have used some adjustments. Now, I am not an expert in adjusting gears, this, that, and the other. I'm sure it's not a very difficult thing to do. In fact, I know it's not a very difficult thing to do. All that being said, I feel like a few adjustments to the derailleur here would give you some buttery smooth shifting, and if you were able to do that, matching it with this motor that performed really well, honestly, in our opinion, you would have an even better riding experience. Next, let's talk about the extras. There's only two things here I would classify as being extra on this bike. One would be this front headlight. Now, the front headlight itself looks really cool. It's got this big, shiny, vintage look. It's not actually metallic, it is a plastic. It's also not connected to the bike's battery source, so you do have to replace the battery. I couldn't figure out exactly how to get in there, so I'm not sure what battery that this takes, but it is something you may have to replace down the road if you do use the light quite a bit. From a brightness perspective, it really wasn't that bright. It is a little bit unfair to judge it outside, however, I did ride it later in the evening. I also tested it out in a garage. It really isn't that bright, and it is not very dispersive. It's very cylindrical, very tubular, as if you were shining a flashlight through a smaller tube. From a looks perspective, I think it looks pretty cool. I feel like it matches the bike pretty well, but from a usability perspective, I'm not sure I would be comfortable riding this bike at night. However, from a safety perspective, it is going to be a light source that will let cars know you're there. So it's cool that it's included. I like that it matches the style, but there are a couple downsides in my opinion. The other extra, and one of my favorite parts, is actually this suspension seat post. This seat post is an EXA form suspension seat post. I'm not sure about all of the specs or the details. All I know is it was a pleasure to ride. They also offer fenders for this particular bike, however, they don't come stock. And if I was to get this bike, I would probably want those fenders included. Adding some high-grade plastic fenders to this particular bike would probably bring the value up a little bit in my opinion. Next, let's talk about the essentials. So the Hammer ships with 2 keys, a 2-amp D-Power battery charger. They also include this little bell here. I didn't install it for the review. I didn't feel like I needed it, but they do include that in the packaging as well. It comes with all of the tools to assemble your bike and the user manual. Next, let's talk about the suspension. So the Hammer comes equipped with this adjustable front fork suspension here. I'm not positive what the deformation is on this particular model. However, after riding it around for a while, I think it probably falls around that 35mm range as far as the deformation goes. The other form of suspension we get here is going to come from that C-post. We already mentioned it. It's that EXA form suspension C-post. And as I mentioned, I am a big fan of this. Fits the bike really well. I feel like it fits the use case really well. Another aspect of suspension is going to be those wheels. The tires we have here are some Chaoyang 26 by 4 inch. So this is those big, beefy, fat tires that people love so much. We've got a max PSI of 20. I'm not sure exactly what the low end of that is. Maybe you could get away with 4, 5, 6, something like that. And regular Schrader valves. Now we don't get any sidewall reflective striping or puncture protection here, but as I mentioned earlier, this probably isn't a bike I would choose to ride at night, so if you had to ride it at night, the only sort of safety features we have here are going to be that little light in the front, and then we do have some reflectors here in the spokes. Next, let's talk about the controls. So we've got the display fired on here, and you can see some of the readouts. We've got battery level, we've got the odometer, we've got the speed, we have got the mode that we're in, and the level of pedal assist. To raise pedal assist, we're just going to press up on the keypad over here, and to lower pedal assist, we are just going to press on the down button over here. Something to note here is that with this keypad and computer, these are both things that you have to install yourself. Not a huge deal, and honestly, it does give you a little bit of flexibility as far as where you want to put this monitor, where you would like to put the keypad. I just chose to install the computer right here in the center of the handlebars, and then I brought that keypad as far back as I can over to the left. I also chose to wrap that cord around the handlebar as I went up. That way, it just kind of kept it from, flapping around, kept it nice and tight to the handlebars there. Another note here is that when you turn the bike on, it automatically comes up into pedal assist level 1. So as soon as you turn the bike on, it will turn on and you'll be in pedal assist level 1. One of the reasons that this is important to note is that as soon as you turn the bike on, it'll be in pedal assist level 1, meaning that throttle will be active. Since it's a half twist throttle, it's just important to remember that once the bike is on, that is going to be live. To get into the advanced settings, you're going to hold down the up and down arrow keys. That's going to bring up our positions menu. Position 1 is going to be the brightness of our LCD screen. Theoretically, you could lower this down in different light situations or to conserve battery. I'm not sure exactly how much extra battery you'll get by lowering your LCD display, but it's up to you, it's personal preference. Position number 2 is going to be choosing between miles per hour or kilometers per hour. Position number 3 is going to be the voltage. So we got this 48 volt battery, so we are going to leave this on 48. Position 4 is going to be the sleep time interval, which means that if we have the bike on and we haven't done anything for 4-5 minutes, then the bike will shut off to conserve power. You can adjust this to up to an hour. Position 5 allows you to change how many levels of pedal assist that you have. So it's not like you're going to be going faster if you choose 3, 5, or 9. It just breaks it up in a different way, and it's personal preference. So 0 would be 3 levels, 1 would be 5 levels, and then 2 would be 9 levels of pedal assist. Position 6 is going to be wheel size. So right now these are set on 26 because we've got those 26 by 4 inch tires. Position 7 is going to be the speed limit. You'll notice here it is set to 32 kilometers per hour, which is the reason we weren't getting up to that full 28. You would just adjust this to 45 kilometers per hour, and then you'd be able to hit that class 3, 28 miles per hour. And first, let's go ahead and take the pedal assist level off, and we'll just pedal this thing like a bike. Go ahead and take this thing down a little bit. Let's put it down there. So we got it in second gear right now. Shifting's not horrible. Definitely probably could be tuned up just a little bit. And as far as the pedal geometry goes, that is pretty good as well. I'm going to pop that up into third. Pretty good shift there. Pop up into fourth. Sorry if the audio is wavering a little bit. A fly landed in my eye. Still might be there actually. All right, let's go up into fifth. Now, one thing to note, just as we're shifting right here, the way that they have this set up with this kind of bigger half grip throttle, it forces you to really reach up here. I mean, I'm reaching almost 5-6 inches just to change the gear. In most scenarios, especially the place you're going to be riding this, probably not a big deal. However, just something to, you know, keep in mind because we're using that big half twist throttle here. If we had something that was just a little thumb lever, that might make a little bit more sense with this bike, especially because the way that these kind of, you know, angle out, I'm kind of twisting my wrist a little bit to get that twist here. So something they might think about doing is adding a thumb throttle here, and then that will bring this over a lot closer, and that won't be a big issue. Started to get a little windy back there, so we came back to the street, a little protected from the houses and the big trees and whatnot. So we're in 5th. Let's go ahead and pop it up into 6th. A little bit of a harder shift there. Now, one thing to point out that I really like is that with this display here, it is going to show us how fast we're going, even though the motor is not working, because we're just, you know, pedaling this thing in bicycle mode right now. Go ahead and pop up to 7th. So from 5 to 6 was a little rough. 6 to 7 was pretty much perfect. And we're going, and even with that, you could get quite a good amount of speed with this ratio, I think, here. But we're not here for a workout, we're here to cruise. So let's go ahead and put it in pedal assist level 1. Let's see, it'll bring us down a little bit. All right, so we're in pedal assist level 1. Let's go ahead and get going. So we got about 3/4 of a rotation before pedal assist level 1 started to kick off. Now we've got this straight out of the box, so the way that it comes, we haven't messed with anything in there. Let's see. Pedal assist level 2. 2 is going to bring us up to that 11, 12 miles an hour. And pedal assist level 3. That's going to get us to 15. Pedal assist level 4. It's going to get us to 20. And pedal assist level 5. That is going to get us, I guess, still right about that 20 miles an hour there. Now, this bike feels like it has a lot more to give, and so I think we have to pop in there into the settings to adjust that top speed. I would not be surprised if we could get 28 miles per hour on this thing whatsoever. Yeah, it definitely feels like the motor is cutting itself off. Feels like it's got a lot more to give. Now this is a bit of a heavier bike, so the fact that it is just doing what it's doing is pretty impressive. All right, so we're going to go ahead and test out the throttle. Now, the pedal assist level does govern how fast the throttle is able to go. So like right now we're in pedal assist level 1. So we'll hold back this real quick. It gets us up to about that 7-8 mile an hour mark. Pedal assist level 2. And pedal assist level 3. About to that 15, pedal assist level 4. Then we get us to that 18 miles an hour. And let's see what we can do with pedal assist level 5. Oh, I was supposed to be using the throttle there, wasn't I? Let's try that again. Let's try it again, okay? All right, we're in pedal assist level 5. Let's just do this one from a dead stop. One thing to note also is that these brakes, they are motor inhibitors as well. So as soon as you tap on these brakes, it is going to cut power to the motor. Pick up nice and quick. And this should get us right around that 20-mile-an-hour mark. Similar to the pedal assist, but it did take us a little bit longer to get there. And like I said, I feel like the bike could accelerate all the way up to 28 miles per hour if we were to pop in there and adjust some settings and whatnot. And as far as the motor noise goes, it's really not too bad. Definitely a little bit louder than some of the motors that we tested in the past. And yeah, kind of right there in the middle, maybe a little bit towards the louder side of things. But, you know, again, something I usually talk about is that we do have these big, 4-inch wide tires with those nice big knobs on there. That's really going to create a lot of road noise as well. So some of that stuff that you hear, some of that noise is probably going to be, if it's not the wind, it's probably a little bit of that tire action as well. So again, just another comment about this twist throttle here. Because I'm twisting it, my grip really becomes fairly compromised over here on the right side. So just something to take into consideration, like if you were going to be riding this thing around, probably wouldn't want to do it in places or scenarios where you wouldn't feel comfortable, basically just riding with the one hand. Speaking of taking some hands off, let's see if this thing rides well no-handed. Okay. Not bad. Doesn't feel super comfortable. Like I can do it, but I'm putting a little bit of, waist work in there and basically just doing a lot of the job for it. Let's go ahead and let's take this off road, just right here into this river. No, I'm just kidding. But we're back here on this dirt trail. It's pretty hard packed, at least, when it doesn't rain. When it rains, it is not that. So with this bike, it doesn't come with any fenders or a rack. Now they do have spots to mount those, so I am assuming you could find something, if Ecotric doesn't offer it, probably third party that would match this thing pretty well. But right in the box, it doesn't come with, either the fenders or the rack. So just cruising back here, honestly, not too bad. I thought that seat post suspension was something for maybe people with back problems, or maybe we're going on really long rides, or they had some sort of a pre-existing condition. But after riding this around, because this is the first seat post suspension I've ridden on a bike, especially the first one I've seen that comes stock on a bike, I'm enjoying it. It's nice. It's very cushiony. The ride is just super smooth. So pretty big fan of the old butt cushion here. So we talked about the walk mode when we were doing the controls, but let's see a real life example of that. So to engage the walk mode, we're just going to hold down this down arrow right here, and that is going to engage the walk mode. Now something to note about this one is you see we've got the pedal assist level off. Now some bikes have the ability to, when you put it in pedal assist level 0, it doesn't actually engage the walk mode. Now with this one, you can engage the walk mode whether pedal assist is on or off. Not really a pro or con either way, but just something to mention. Personally, I might lean towards being able to disable the walk mode, by putting it into pedal assist level 0, but we do have a safety feature in that as soon as we let our finger off the trigger, it stops. So that's nice. Definitely not something we can, walk with a cruise control sort of style, but the fact that we can just let it go, pops off, kind of, makes up as far as the safety of the walk mode goes. Alright guys, that is going to do it for our review of the Hammer from Ecotric. If you want to know more, I'll have a link down to their website below. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Love talking to you guys, and we will catch you on the next one.